Clint Eastwood takes a jab at Jasmine Crockett. Her response sets the internet on fire. The lights blazed bright on the CNN town hall stage as Clint Eastwood, the 94-year-old Hollywood legend, adjusted his black cowboy hat. His iconic squint cut through the studio like a knife. The same look that had intimidated countless movie villains and commanded respect for 7 decades. Across from him sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, radiant in a bright yellow blazer, confident, poised, and completely unbothered by the cultural titan sitting just feet away. Eastwood had walked into that studio with the swagger of someone who'd never lost a public confrontation. This was supposed to be easy, a legendary actor with decades of conservative credibility facing off against a relatively unknown freshman congresswoman from Texas. In his mind, this wasn't even a fair fight. His plan was simple: use his massive cultural authority and that famous Dirty Harry growl to expose Crockett as just another inexperienced politician trying to play in the big leagues. But something was different about the way Crockett sat there. While most people would be starstruck or intimidated by Eastwood's presence, she remained perfectly still, pen poised over a legal pad filled with meticulously prepared notes. Her eyes were sharp, focused, calculating. This wasn't someone who came to be overwhelmed by celebrity status. This was someone who came to work. What happened in the next 30 minutes would shock the entertainment world, ignite social media, and completely rewrite both of their legacies forever. This wasn't just another political debate or celebrity endorsement gone wrong. This was the moment when old Hollywood's traditional authority crashed headfirst into the new generation of American leadership, and the results were absolutely devastating. Eastwood thought his decades of fame and conservative street cred would easily overpower this young woman from Dallas. He had no idea he was about to face someone who'd been preparing for exactly this moment her entire career, someone who understood that in today's world, facts hit harder than fame, and preparation beats privilege every single time. The confrontation that followed became more than just a viral moment. It turned into a cultural earthquake that had political analysts, entertainment journalists, and millions of Americans talking for weeks. Clips of what happened spread like wildfire across every platform, with hashtags trending and memes flooding timelines faster than anyone could keep up. This wasn't your typical political theater where both sides walk away claiming victory. This was a complete and total dismantling, one that left a Hollywood icon visibly shaken and elevated a congresswoman to national stardom overnight. The audience that night witnessed something unprecedented, the moment when celebrity status met its match against pure, undeniable competence. Before we dive into exactly how this explosive confrontation unfolded, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what you're about to see will change everything you thought you knew about power, respect, and who really runs the show in modern America. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single second of how Jasmine Crockett just schooled one of Hollywood's biggest legends and why everyone's still talking about it. On that unforgettable night, the stage was set for a clash that no one saw coming, not just a debate, but a battle between two vastly different worlds. On one side sat Clint Eastwood, the embodiment of classic Hollywood grit and conservative patriotism. His career spanned nearly 8 decades, from iconic spaghetti westerns to Oscar-winning dramas, making him one of the most recognized figures in American entertainment. At 94, he wasn't just an actor, he was a living legend who had shaped how generations viewed heroism, masculinity, and the American spirit. Eastwood carried an aura of old-school authority that transcended film. To millions of Americans, his name meant rugged individualism, tough choices, and unwavering principles. From Make My Day to his legendary squint, every gesture had become part of the cultural fabric. He wasn't just delivering political opinions, he was channeling decades of playing characters who never backed down, never apologized, and always emerged victorious through sheer determination and moral clarity. Across from him sat Jasmine Crockett, representing everything Hollywood's old guard wasn't prepared for. At 40 years old, this civil rights attorney turned congresswoman embodied a new generation of American leadership, diverse, dynamic, and driven by a completely different kind of courage. Her bright yellow blazer wasn't just a fashion choice, it was a statement of intent, a splash of color in a room full of traditional black suits and conservative expectations. Crockett's story was one of grinding upward through merit alone. She'd worked multiple jobs to pay for law school, built a legal practice defending people who couldn't defend themselves, and entered Congress not as a celebrity seeking relevance, but as someone determined to create real change. Her reputation in Texas political circles was already solid, sharp, prepared, and absolutely fearless when facing down establishment power. Behind the scenes, both camps had their strategies mapped out. Eastwood's team believed this would be straightforward, use his legendary status and conservative street cred to expose this young Democrat as just another inexperienced politician trying to play in the big leagues. His supporters in the audience were primed to watch their hero deliver another memorable takedown, like something straight out of his movies. But Crockett's preparation told a different story. Her team had studied every political appeal. Rants Eastwood had made since his infamous empty chair speech at the 2012 Republican convention. They knew his tactics, his appeals to age and experience, his tendency to dismiss younger politicians as naive idealists. What they'd prepared for was something much more sophisticated than celebrity intimidation. The studio buzzed with electric tension. 2,000 carefully selected audience members sensed they were witnessing something bigger than a typical political discussion. This was a generational showdown, old Hollywood meeting new politics, traditional authority facing fresh expertise, and cultural nostalgia confronting contemporary reality. Anderson Cooper, moderating from his anchor desk, understood the television gold he was sitting on. The visual alone was perfect. Eastwood in his trademark black ensemble and cowboy hat, looking like he'd stepped out of one of his westerns, versus Crockett, polished and professional, representing the diverse face of modern American leadership. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and everyone in that room knew it. When Clint Eastwood settled into his chair that night, he wasn't just another guest. He was executing a calculated game plan built on decades of commanding respect through sheer presence alone. His strategy was as classic as his films: use overwhelming cultural authority, the weight of his 94 years, and that famous intimidating squint to quickly establish dominance over this young congresswoman from Texas. Eastwood understood the power of visual storytelling better than anyone. Dressed head to toe in his signature black ensemble, complete with that iconic cowboy hat, he looked like he'd stepped straight out of one of his westerns. This wasn't accidental. His team knew that before he even opened his mouth, millions of viewers would see the legendary man with no name sitting across from a politician they'd barely hear. His opening gambit was pure Hollywood intimidation. That gravelly voice, refined through 7 decades of delivering memorable one-liners, cut through the studio like a blade. "This little lady thinks she knows about America," he growled, immediately establishing a power dynamic that had worked for him countless times before. The dismissive tone wasn't just condescending. It was designed to rattle Crockett and signal to the audience that she was out of her league. Eastwood's playbook relied heavily on generational warfare. He positioned himself as the wise elder who had lived through what real Americans have faced, while painting Crockett as just another entitled millennial politician who wanted everything handed to her. This wasn't just about age. It was about claiming moral authority over what it means to be truly American. The Hollywood legend leaned into themes that resonated powerfully with his conservative base: hard work, personal responsibility, and the belief that previous generations had built something sacred that younger politicians were trying to tear down. He questioned whether Crockett had ever built anything real, dismissing her congressional work as mere talking while highlighting his own decades of job creation in the entertainment industry. His strategy went beyond policy disagreements. It was character assassination wrapped in folksy wisdom. By repeatedly referring to "your generation" with obvious disdain, Eastwood was tapping into deep-seated frustrations among older conservative voters who felt displaced by rapid cultural changes. He wasn't just debating Crockett, he was positioning her as the face of everything wrong with modern America. The theatrical elements were vintage Eastwood. He stood up dramatically, paced the stage with his cowboy boots clicking against the floor, and used every gesture to project dominance. This was a performance signed for viral clips and conservative social media, where his tough guy persona would play perfectly to his audience. But Eastwood's reliance on intimidation contained the seeds of his own downfall. By dismissing Crockett so completely, by questioning her qualifications so aggressively, he was inadvertently setting the stage for her to prove him catastrophically wrong. His attacks were so personal and condescending that they would make her eventual response even more devastating. What Eastwood didn't realize was that sitting across from him wasn't some starstruck politician who would crumble under celebrity pressure. Instead, he was facing someone who had been preparing for exactly this moment, and what came next would leave the Hollywood icon speechless. Clint Eastwood's opening salvo in the CNN town hall was more than a simple debate tactic. It was a calculated move dripping with dismissive arrogance. From the moment he started speaking, it was clear he intended not just to challenge Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's policies, but to undermine her very legitimacy as a voice for America. "Listen, young lady," Eastwood began, his gravelly voice echoing through the studio with that trademark dirty, hairy rasp. "I've been making movies about real American heroes since before you were born. I know what this country needs, and it's not more politicians making promises they can't keep." The condescension wasn't subtle. It was a direct assault on Crockett's credibility, positioning himself as the authentic American while reducing her to just another inexperienced politician. Eastwood's strategy became increasingly personal as he warmed to his theme. He questioned her accomplishments with theatrical disdain, asking mockingly, "What have you actually accomplished? I've created jobs, made films that inspire Americans, built businesses. You've been in Congress for what, a couple of years, and you think you can lecture me about America?" Each word was delivered with the confidence of a man who had never been challenged by someone like Crockett. The Hollywood legend then launched into his most devastating attack: generational warfare. "The problem with your generation," he said, leaning forward and pointing a weathered finger directly at her, "is that you think you deserve everything handed to you. You want to change America without understanding what made America great in the first place." His voice carried decades of cultural authority, and conservative audience members nodded approvingly, recognizing their own frustrations with younger politicians. Eastwood wasn't content to stop there. Standing up from his chair in a dramatic flourish that commanded the room's attention, he paced slightly, his cowboy boots clicking against the stage floor. "I've worked for everything I've got, started with nothing, built a career through determination and talent. Your generation wants to tear down everything my generation built without having any idea what it took to build it." The dismissive tone reached its peak when Eastwood turned to face Crockett directly, his famous squint intensifying. "So tell me, Congresswoman, what have you actually built? What problems have you actually solved? Or are you just another politician who thinks America owes you something?" The attack was designed to be final, decisive, a knockout blow that would reduce her to silence. But something unexpected was happening. While conservative viewers applauded each of Eastwood's points, others in the audience were growing uncomfortable with the increasingly personal nature of his attacks. Phones were recording every exchange, and social media was already buzzing with reactions to what many saw as an older white man attempting to silence a younger black woman through intimidation rather than substance. Throughout this barrage, Jasmine Crockett sat quietly taking notes, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. She wasn't rattled or defensive, she was waiting. Eastwood had just given her the perfect setup for what would become one of the most devastating political responses in recent memory. His arrogance had set the stage for his own spectacular downfall. While Clint Eastwood strode into the CNN town hall with the swagger of a Hollywood legend ready to dominate, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett arrived with something far more powerful: preparation. Unlike many politicians who rely on charisma or sound bites, Crockett had spent weeks meticulously studying Eastwood's past interviews, speeches, and public appearances. Her team had analyzed his tactics, his typical lines, and his methods of deflecting tough questions or asserting dominance. Crockett's preparation was rooted in her legal background. As a former civil rights attorney, she knew the value of research, evidence, and remaining calm under pressure. She had built her career on dismantling arguments piece by piece in courtrooms, facing down hostile witnesses and intimidating opposing counsel. This televised town hall was just another courtroom, and Eastwood was just another opponent trying to use bluster instead of facts. In the quiet moments before the cameras rolled, Crockett reviewed her carefully crafted notes one final time. Her legal pad was filled with specific accomplishments, legislative victories, and detailed responses to predictable attacks about her age, experience, and generational perspective. But these weren't just talking points. They were documented facts, verified statistics, and real stories of people whose lives she'd changed through her work. Her strategy went deeper than simple defense. Crockett knew that to defeat someone of Eastwood's stature, she couldn't just respond to his attacks. She had to completely reframe the conversation. Her legal training had taught her that the best way to handle an aggressive opponent was to let them overextend themselves, then systematically dismantle their entire argument with precision and facts. Behind the scenes, her team had prepared for every possible scenario. They'd studied Eastwood's 2012 empty chair speech at the Republican National Convention, his various political interviews, and his tendency to rely on folksy charm and intimidation when faced with substantive challenges. They knew he would try to make this about age versus youth, experience versus inexperience, Hollywood legend versus unknown politician. What they'd prepared was something entirely different. Crockett wasn't there to be intimidated or dismissed. She was there to demonstrate what real leadership looked like in the 21st century. Preparation over performance, substance over celebrity, facts over feelings. As Eastwood launched into his opening attacks, calling her young lady and questioning her understanding of America, Crockett remained perfectly composed. Her pen moved steadily across her notepad, but her mind was already 3 steps ahead. She wasn't taking notes on what he was saying. She was mentally organizing her response, choosing which pieces of evidence would be most devastating, deciding exactly how to deliver the knockout blow. The calm on her face wasn't nervousness or uncertainty. It was the quiet confidence of someone who had done her homework and was ready for exactly this moment. Every condescending comment, every dismissive gesture, every appeal to his age and fame was playing directly into her hands. Eastwood was giving her everything she needed to completely destroy his argument. Her years as a civil rights attorney had taught her that preparation always beats intimidation, that facts always triumph over fame, and that staying calm under pressure is the most powerful weapon any advocate can possess. As Eastwood continued his assault, Crockett was simply waiting for her moment to show America what real strength looked like. The moment Anderson Cooper finally gave Jasmine Crockett the floor, the entire dynamic in the studio shifted. Eastwood had just finished his most brutal attack, standing over her like some gunfighter from one of his westerns, confident he'd delivered the knockout blow. But when Crockett slowly rose from her chair, something in her posture, calm, controlled, absolutely unbothered, should have been Eastwood's first warning that he'd seriously miscalculated. "Mr. Eastwood," she began, her voice steady but carrying an edge that made everyone lean forward, "I appreciate your long career in Hollywood, but let me tell you what I've actually built." The word "actually" cut through the air like a blade, immediately signaling that everything was about to change. This wasn't going to be a defensive response. This was going to be an education. Crockett reached into her blazer and pulled out that thick folder, the one she'd been guarding throughout Eastwood's entire assault. The camera zoomed in as she opened it with practiced efficiency, revealing pages of documentation, statistics, and official records. This wasn't a prop for show. This was a lawyer's arsenal, and she was about to use every single piece of ammunition. "You want to know what I've built? I built a legal practice defending civil rights before I ever ran for office. I built coalitions that actually changed laws, not just made movies about heroes, but created real change for real people." Her voice gained strength with each accomplishment, each fact landing like a precision strike against Eastwood's earlier dismissals. But then came the documentation. Crockett began rattling off specifics with surgical precision. "In my time in Congress, I've secured $50 million in federal funding for job training programs. I've helped pass legislation creating over 10,000 renewable energy jobs across the South. I've authored bills reducing prescription drug costs for seniors by an average of 30%. Each statistic was backed by official documents she held up to the cameras, turning abstract claims into undeniable proof. The studio audience, moments before applauding Eastwood's attacks, now sat in stunned silence as they watched a masterclass in preparation demolish celebrity bluster. Even conservative viewers couldn't dispute the numbers they were seeing with their own eyes. Eastwood tried to interrupt, raising his hand dismissively, but Crockett wasn't finished. Years of courtroom experience had taught her how to control a room, and she wasn't about to let a Hollywood actor derail her moment. "Mr. Eastwood, you talked about my generation wanting everything handed to us. Let me tell you about my generation. I worked 3 jobs to pay for law school. I started my career with $100,000 in student debt and a commitment to help people who couldn't help themselves. Then came the moment that would be replayed millions of times across every social platform. Crockett looked directly into the cameras, then back at Eastwood, and delivered the line that would define both their legacies. "Mr. Eastwood, you've spent 70 years playing heroes in movies. I've spent my entire adult life actually being one in real life, and the difference is my work actually helps people instead of just entertaining them." The studio exploded. The moment Jasmine Crockett delivered her knockout line about playing heroes versus being one, the CNN studio erupted, but that was nothing compared to what happened online. Within seconds, phones across the audience were uploading clips to every platform imaginable, and social media absolutely exploded with a force that stunned even the most seasoned political observers. Twitter became a battlefield of viral clips and instant reactions. The hashtag Crockett destroys Eastwood shot to the top of trending topics within minutes, alongside hashtag Real Heroes vs Movie Heroes and hashtag Facts Over Fame. Users were sharing the moment faster than the platforms could keep up, with the main clip racking up over 2 million views in the first hour alone. TikTok users went absolutely wild, creating everything from reaction videos to educational breakdowns of Crockett's debate tactics. One particularly viral TikTok showed the exact moment Eastwood's confident smirk disappeared, set to dramatic music with the caption, "When celebrity meets competence." Another popular video featured a split-screen comparison of Eastwood's opening swagger versus his stunned silence afterward, garnering millions of views and thousands of comments. The memes were instant and merciless. The most popular showed side-by-side images of Eastwood looking cocky at the beginning and completely deflated at the end, captioned, "From Dirty Harry to Dirty Laundry." Another viral meme replaced Eastwood's famous "Man with no name" with "Man with no facts," spreading across Instagram stories faster than anyone could track. Even more surprising was how the moment transcended typical political divisions. Conservative influencers who had initially cheered Eastwood's attacks began acknowledging Crockett's impressive preparation. One prominent conservative commentator tweeted, "I disagree with her politics completely, but you have to respect someone who comes this prepared. This is what real debate looks like." The post received over 50,000 likes from users across the political spectrum. Instagram exploded with carousel posts breaking down Crockett's accomplishments, turning her detailed statistics into shareable graphics. Young voters who had never heard of her before were suddenly following her accounts and sharing her legislative victories. Stories flooded with screenshots of her most powerful quotes, particularly that devastating final line about being a real hero. Political YouTube channels rushed to upload reaction videos, with some conservative hosts grudgingly admitting that Eastwood had been outplayed by superior preparation. Liberal channels celebrated what they called a masterclass in political communication, with several videos analyzing her debate techniques gaining hundreds of thousands of views. The clips reached far beyond political circles. Entertainment blogs covered the story as a shocking upset, with headlines like "Hollywood legend gets schooled by freshman congresswoman." Sports commentators even referenced the moment, comparing it to legendary upset victories in boxing and basketball. Late-night talk shows had a field day. Saturday Night Live featured a cold open recreating the moment, with the actor playing Eastwood looking increasingly confused as fake documents piled up. The sketch went viral itself, introducing the story to even more viewers who sought out the original footage. What made this explosion truly unprecedented was how it sustained itself. Unlike typical viral moments that fade within days, Crockett vs. Eastwood continued trending for over a week, with new angles and reactions emerging daily. The moment had become more than just political theater. It was a cultural phenomenon that changed how people viewed both celebrity influence and political preparation forever. The dust barely settled on the CNN town hall stage before the careers of both Clint Eastwood and Jasmine Crockett were transformed forever. What had started as a simple political debate became a cultural earthquake that would reshape both their legacies in ways neither could have anticipated. For Jasmine Crockett, the aftermath was nothing short of meteoric. Within 24 hours of her viral takedown, her congressional office was flooded with over 15,000 messages from supporters across the nation. People weren't just praising her performance, they were energized by her combination of preparation, composure, and unapologetic advocacy for working Americans. The phones wouldn't stop ringing. The political establishment took immediate notice. Democratic Party leaders who had barely known her name before were suddenly calling to offer increased committee assignments and more prominent roles. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office reached out about potential leadership positions, recognizing that Crockett had just demonstrated the kind of political communication skills that could reshape how Democrats engaged with hostile opponents. Fundraising numbers exploded overnight. Crockett's campaign coffers swelled with donations from across the country, many accompanied by notes thanking her for showing what real leadership looks like. National progressive organizations began courting her for endorsements and speaking engagements, while major media outlets competed for exclusive interviews with the congresswoman who had just schooled a Hollywood legend. Political strategists started whispering about Crockett's future. Senate runs, cabinet positions, maybe even higher aspirations. She had become the new face of a generation that valued substance over celebrity, facts over fame. Universities began inviting her to speak at commencement ceremonies, and law schools wanted her to guest lecture on effective advocacy techniques. But for Clint Eastwood, the aftermath told a very different story. The 94-year-old Hollywood icon, who had walked into that studio expecting an easy victory, found his political credibility in tatters. Conservative media outlets that had once celebrated his outspoken political views began publishing pieces questioning whether his celebrity status had clouded his judgment about contemporary politics. The criticism wasn't just coming from opponents, it was coming from his own side. Conservative commentators who had initially cheered his tough guy approach began distancing themselves from what many now called an embarrassing performance. Some Republican leaders privately expressed regret about encouraging his political involvement, worried that his condescending tone toward a sitting congresswoman had damaged the party's efforts to appeal to younger and more diverse voters. Eastwood himself seemed shaken by the experience. In the weeks following the town hall, his public appearances became rare, and when he did speak publicly, the conversation was carefully steered toward his film career rather than politics. Industry insiders reported that the legendary director had been genuinely rattled by how quickly the narrative had turned against him. The broader impact rippled through political culture. The confrontation became a case study in political communication programs across the country, with professors using Crockett's performance to teach students about the power of preparation over intimidation. Political consultants began advising their clients to pull a Crockett, meaning come armed with facts, stay calm under pressure, and never let celebrity status substitute for substance. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Crockett had leveraged her viral moment into national prominence, while Eastwood had largely retreated from political commentary. Their town hall confrontation had become more than just a debate. It was proof that in modern America, preparation and authenticity could triumph over fame and tradition, forever changing how political confrontations would be fought. The confrontation between Jasmine Crockett and Clint Eastwood didn't just create a viral sensation, it rewrote the entire playbook for American politics, establishing new rules that reshaping how power works in the digital age. What happened that night exposed a fundamental shift in our political landscape. The old formula, celebrity status plus traditional authority equals automatic respect, had officially expired. While Eastwood relied on 7 decades of fame and cultural influence, Crockett proved that in today's hyper-connected world, preparation and authenticity have become the ultimate weapons. Political consultants across the country immediately began studying what became known as the Crockett model. Her approach wasn't revolutionary in theory, but it was devastatingly effective in practice. Come armed with facts, stay calm under pressure, and never let intimidation derail your message. Within weeks, campaign managers were advising their candidates to pull a Crockett whenever facing hostile opponents or celebrity endorsements. The blueprint goes deeper than debate tactics. It represents a generational transfer of power. Young politicians, especially women and people of color, watched Crockett dismantle a Hollywood icon and realized that preparation could level any playing field. Law schools reported surges in enrollment, with students specifically citing Crockett's performance as inspiration for careers in public service. This moment also shattered the traditional reverence for age and fame in political discourse. The automatic deference once shown to celebrities and elder statesmen gave way to new expectations. Prove your worth with substance, not status. Voters began demanding that their leaders demonstrate competence rather than simply claiming authority. Media coverage evolved too. News outlets, recognizing how quickly the narrative had shifted online, started focusing more on fact-checking and preparation rather than just personality-driven drama. The viral clips forced journalists to analyze substance over spectacle, changing how political confrontations are covered and consumed. Perhaps most importantly, Crockett's victory proved that authenticity resonates in ways that scripted performances never can. Her willingness to represent her generation's struggles, student debt, climate change, economic inequality, without apology connected with millions who felt unheard by traditional political voices. The digital component can't be ignored. Social media platforms transformed Crockett's response from a single moment into a cultural movement, proving that preparation and truth can create viral content just as effectively as controversy and conflict. This has fundamentally changed how politicians approach public appearances, knowing that one well-documented moment can define entire careers. The new rules are clear. Study your opponents, master your facts, stay composed under fire, and never underestimate the power of being genuinely prepared. Celebrity endorsements and traditional authority figures still matter, but they're no longer enough on their own. This blueprint extends beyond politics into business, education, and public discourse generally. The Crockett moment showed that in our information-rich age, substance beats style, facts defeat fame, and preparation conquers privilege. As we move forward, the politicians who thrive will be those who embrace this new reality, where viral moments are earned through competence, where respect is built on results, and where the next generation refuses to be intimidated by the old guard. Jasmine Crockett didn't just win a debate, she created a template for the future of American leadership,